They said the storm took everything, but they were wrong. It left one man tied to a tree, and one dog who refused to let him die. What came next wasn't just survival. It was the beginning of something that would change what we call loyalty forever. This is the North Star. Noah Raines, the survivor. Kira, the shepherd. Dr. Lila Chen, the analyst. Cole Hawkins, the broken mirror. Emily Vale, the witness. Alma Duarte, the judge of winter. Silas Marrow, the architect. Danny, the new generation. Agent Heller, the shadow between. Anna Raines, the lost star. The night made a sound like torn cloth. Wind shredded itself on the black pines, and the temperature had fallen so quickly the snow squeaked under boots. A sound Noah Raines would forever associate with the moment things went wrong. "Half a mile," he said into his throat mic, voice roughened by cold and old salt air. The HUD in his goggles flickered. Ash-blonde stubble showed silver in the reflected snowglow. His breath lifted as white as prayer. He raised a fist, and the four-man team halted in a crouch along the tree line. Far ahead, past a white meadow and a shoulder of rock, a single utility cabin hunched into the drift like something trying not to be seen. "Thermals?" he asked. "3 heat signatures, maybe 4. Hawkins whispered behind him. Jokes used to fall out of Hawkins like loose change. Not tonight. Not with the temperature knifing and the comms spitting static and the GPS freezing into a blue, useless brick. Noah scanned. The interior Alaska sky had the sickly green smear of a low aurora flattening the stars. Overhead, spruce tips ticked against the wind. Somewhere, a raven spoke like a lock clicking shut. "Same plan," Noah said. "Soft entry. No heroics." He didn't add what they all knew. The raid was supposed to be a quiet bite. Seize a ledger and a sat phone, roll up a small ring running mislabeled ore south. That was the story. It had taken him a full day of shoveling his way through procurement codes and logistics manifests to admit that the story had too many clean edges. Still, he'd trusted the op because that's what he did. He'd trusted because you can drown in second-guessing more surely than you drown in ice. They descended the slope, knees high in powder. The cold had settled inside Noah's gear, inside his bones, a slow ache that memory recognized from rescue swimmer days when the sea turned black and mean, and he dove in anyway. At the cabin's skirt, he saw it, a glint too neat at the baseboard where snow curled like frosting. "Freeze," he said. His forearm lifted. Hawkins' boot hung mid-air. Noah knelt, brushed snow back with a glove, and found the wire. Trip line, old school. Hawkins grunted. "Cute." Noah slid his multi-tool in, pinched, eased slack. His breath fogged his lenses. Over Hawkins' shoulder, the tree line became a line of blanks. No texture, no story, just dark. His skin prickled. He cut the wire, caught it before it could whisper back into the snow. "Go," he mouthed. They moved. 2 steps. The world split. The first shot came from the left, tight and close, a punch of orange in the wind. Bark spat from the log by Noah's ear. The second shot found someone. Noah didn't see who, only heard a sound that had no place in the cold. Wet, human, surprised. "Ambush!" Hawkins barked, and then the meadow was claws and light. Noah hit the snow, rolled behind a deadfall, returned 2 rounds toward muzzle flare. He saw figures in snow camo, fast and disciplined. Not the sloppy courier guards he'd built this plan for. He saw the cabin's window blink once with a handheld strobe, A signal, not a mistake. He saw the way the field of fire had been shaped to funnel them into a knot of drift and stump. Inside jobs don't look like movies. They look like this, a path salted before your boots ever touch it. South draw, Noah shouted. Break and smoke. But his throat mic coughed static. He popped a smoke canister anyway, watched its pale cloud shred in the wind without forming cover. A shot smacked his shoulder plate and spun him. He felt nothing. Cold had numbed that long ago. He crabbed right, legs churning, heart throwing slow, heavy beats that marked a body spending itself too fast. Something struck the base of his skull. There was no warning, only the old familiar flash. A camera bulb behind the eyes, and then the world skated sideways on a slick of black. He woke, tied to a cedar. When the cold gets that deep, time loses its verbs. The rope had cut through his gloves. He couldn't feel his hands. His head throbbed with his pulse, but he couldn't measure how long it had been because the wind had stolen the clock. The snow came in knives now, hard little blades that clicked against his cheekbones and worked their way down his collar like thieves. He tried the knot. It burned his wrist raw and did not move. He tried a prayer. It fogged the air and fell. He thought of the sea, the way, in worst weather, you learn to count by breath and beam, by any two steady things. He found two steady things, the cedar at his back and the way his chest still rose. Somewhere in the snow hiss, a different sound threaded through. Light, rhythmic, closer. Noah stilled. The shape came from the left, broke out of the pines like a shadow with breath, and pressed heat against his knees. A face lifted, sharp-eyed, one ear cropped, a white blaze like a comet on the muzzle. "Kira," he said. It came out a scrape. She whined low, a sound he could feel in his ribs, and then she went to work. Teeth on rope, paws digging for purchase, neck muscles cording. He remembered another winter, a river mouth choked with brash ice, a dog thrashing in the black. He'd gone over the rail without thinking. Later he'd told the report it was training, not impulse. People lie to paper so paper can lie back. The top strand parted. The knot sagged. Noah twisted his wrists, hissed, felt pins and needles light his forearms like sparks. Kira tugged again, jaw set. The last twist gave. The rope fell. Noah collapsed forward into the powder and sucked air like a drowning man. Kira pressed her body along his, a furnace made of muscle and will. He slid an arm around her shoulders, hid his face in her fur, and let his breath get small and regular again. "Good girl," he said into the ruff at her neck. Good girl." Headlights probed the trees beyond the meadow, white spears ghosting through trunks. Voices traveled with them, faint as radio static. Noah's heartbeat slowed to something usable. He put his mouth beside Kira's ear. Quiet. They crawled. The wind had carved a low, hard cave under a sastrugi ridge. Kira found it and shouldered her way inside first, then turned so the heat of her belly faced him. Snow and night muffled the world. Noah could hear his breath, her breath, the wire saw whisper of ice sifting in the entrance. He could also hear words that weren't sounds at all. Hawkins, Lena, names that rose and fell with the wind's pitch. He didn't chase them. Names can drown you. He dozed and woke and dozed again, each waking a different life. Once he heard footsteps outside the cave and tasted metal. Kira's growl came up from the floor of her chest like it had been carved there with a knife. The steps paused. A flashlight beam combed the drift and slid away. At dawn, the wind sank. The sky went the color of bone. Noah levered himself out of the cave, and Kira followed, snow crisping on her coat. The meadow held two sets of tracks, a patrol's wide stride and a smaller, quicker line that came from the trees, crossed the open, and ended at a cedar. At the foot of the tree, the rope lay like a shed skin. Noah stood over it a long time. The cold tried to argue. His shoulder throbbed arguments of its own. He let both voices speak and then chose a third voice, the one that said, "Move." They angled into the trees. Powder gave way to a packed lane where something heavy had passed after the storm, a sled or a truck with chained tires. Kira lowered her head and flowed along it, tail flagging when scent got strong. Noah followed, every step a negotiation with muscles that wanted to be done. The lane opened on a small clearing. A box truck, half buried in plow-thrown snow, hunched against a berm, its windshield starred with cracks. The hood steamed faintly as if the engine had only just died. Noah circled left, pistol low, breath controlled. No voices, no new tracks that weren't already filling with lazy drift. At the back, the cargo door had been pried but not opened. He eased it up. Hinges creaked like old bones. Inside, canvased crates strapped in rows, lozenges of frost on the canvas corners. A brittle chemical tang rode up out of the dark. He slit one canvas. Not guns, not food. Or dense black-green concentrates in sealed drums, each stamped with a lot code and a destination code that did not match any port he trusted. Rare earth, money you couldn't fold, money that drew men like Silas Marrow out of whatever hole they hibernate in between wars. On a crossbar above the load, something dangled on a lanyard. He reached up and palmed it. A sat phone, old model, scuffed, warm enough to suggest recent hand heat. He thumbed power. The screen came up to a login that scrolled a call sign he knew too well. Not a name. A label. DY22. His breath stopped. DY22 was not in any official tree he ever saw. DY22 lived in the margins of requisitions and the blank spaces of contracts, a honeycomb label that meant someone with keys moved something through doors no one admits exist. The snow behind him whispered. Kira's growl started as vibration. He pivoted and saw two men low in the trees, white parkas, black rifles, the easy way of shoulders that belonged to professionals. Noah didn't think. He dropped, rolled, fired twice into the drift at their feet. Snow popped. One man stumbled. Kira streaked past, a streak of comet white and darker fur, hit the nearer man in his thighs like a wrecking bar, and tore the rifle clear in one clean wrench. The second man froze at the sight instead of shooting. Training can't fix awe. "Talk," Noah said, sight on the center of the man's parka. The sat phone hung from his left hand like a weight he couldn't decide to keep or drop. "Who set our coordinates?" The man's eyes flicked to the truck, to the sat phone, to the wolfish dog now holding his partner to the snow with 70 pounds of purpose. "Orders," he said, accent flat, indecipherable. "We were told you'd be fertilizer by morning." "By who?" The man's mouth tipped in a small human smile, the first human thing about him. "By the man you're already chasing. We call him Marrow. You'll never touch bone." Noah made a choice then. He let the barrel drop a hair, not enough to invite a shot, just enough to invite a memory of every time he'd chosen the simple answer and found it led to a harder door. "Get out," he said. "Leave the rifles. Leave the truck. Walk north along your own tracks, and don't stop until your pride hurts." The man blinked at mercy like it stung worse than bullets. He nodded once, dropped the weapon, pulled his partner up by the parka, and they went. Two white shapes dissolving into white. Noah exhaled through his nose. The sat phone felt heavier. Kira sat, chest heaving, one paw lifted delicately from a cut he hadn't noticed. She looked up, eyes amber, steady as dawn. "Yeah," Noah said. "I see it too." DY-22, Silas Marrow, and a door he was already walking through. The lane of chained tire grooves bled into a stand of birch, their white trunks tattooed with windburn and old carvings. Noah moved inside the tree line, where the snow lay shallower, and the branches broke the wind into manageable teeth. Kira loped beside him, favoring the paw she'd lifted earlier, but refusing to let the limp become a rule. He pocketed the sat phone, slid a spare glove over it to keep the battery from dying in the cold, and kept the lanyard looped around his wrist. Old swimmer habit. Keep the thing that keeps you breathing tied to you. The trail kinked right and dropped toward a half-frozen river. The water ran black under a pressing skin of ice, breathing in slow fogs. He crouched at the bank and looked downstream. A low bridge, just treated logs strapped together with steel strap, spanned the narrow. Below the bridge, the ice had shattered where something heavy had gone through. Kira tested the edge and snorted, ears flicking. Noah smiled despite the ache that had set up house behind his eyes. "I hear you," he said. "That's how they hid the weight. Over the bridge, into the hole, let the water swallow." A raven ghosted overhead, gave a pronouncement that sounded like a courtroom cough. On the bridge, boot prints crossed and recrossed. 2 men, maybe 3, moving hurriedly. He leaned close. The right foot of one print had a chip in the heel, a tiny crescent. He filed it. Details are anchors. Across the river, the chain grooves resumed and led into willow scrub cut back by recent hands. Beyond that, a curl of smoke flattened against the sky. He checked the wind, tasted iron and something chemical, and went soft-footed through the brush. The truck waited inside a ring of plowed earth. Whoever parked it had tried to bury it in a drift, then thought better, then left in a hurry. Noah eased the cargo door higher and slid a second canvas on a crate. Same drums, same codes. He photographed everything, angles that would show context, details that would survive cross-examination. He had learned a truth no one teaches. If you want a thing to be believed later, respect it now. Kira sniffed the inner wall, then stretched and pawed high. Her claws scraped an area where frost scabbed thicker, like the metal had colder bones. Noah pressed his palm there, felt an emptiness behind the skin, hollow. He probed with the knife. The panel gave, revealing a cavity. Inside lay a ledger book vacuum-packed in plastic, the edges taped over and sealed with a contractor's tamper strip. The strip read, "Northern Interior Logistics. Property. Void if removed." Northern Interior Logistics was the polite face Marrow wore when he needed a bank account and a handshake. Noah had seen the logo in procurement stacks. A blue mountain, with a road cutting its shoulder like a scar. He slipped the ledger into his pack and turned to Kira. "We found their heartbeat." A distant engine wound up, thin but rising like a saw singing. Not close. Not far. He checked the sat phone. The login screen pulsed a prompt. Enter route token. He thumbed the soft keys. No maps, no contacts, no sentiment. Just a string of numbers he didn't have. "Fine," he said. "We do it the slow way." The approach road came in from the east. He stayed off it and ghosted the tree line parallel. Kira kept her chin just above the snow, tasting the world. Within minutes, the trees thinned, and the world opened into a scrapyard turned staging area. Old graders, blue plastic barrels tied in neat pyramids, a prefab office on skids with a door that sat a little too square for something that had been dragged over Muskeg. He lay behind a snow berm and watched. Two men in parkas smoked near the office ramp, hands bare, cigarettes acting as hand warmers and tiny lighthouses. One of them had the crescent chip in his heel. The other's parka was new enough to squeak. A third man, tall, wire-lean, moved between the barrels checking straps. He did not look like he belonged in the cold. Some people wear winter, some endure it like a grudge. The tall man's phone chirped. He stepped into the lee of the office and answered. "Green by nightfall. Marrow wants—" The wind ate the rest and delivered a different gift, the squeak parka man saying, "Supposed to be a ghost out there. DHS boy tied to a tree, back from the dead." The tall man smiled with half his mouth. "Ghosts don't bleed. We saw the prints." Noah filed the angle of the smile, the cadence. It had the training ground's boredom. He felt the old impulse to solve it now, to reach into the scene and snatch the thread. But any rescue swimmer will tell you, the first rule of drowning is that the panicked person will take you with them. Patience is also a throw line. He retreated a length, set a camera on a dead stump, framed a shot that watched the office door and the barrels both, and left it to keep its small, honest record. Then he circled wide to the prefab's rear. A generator thrummed inside a plywood box. He cracked the box just enough to reach the choke and starve the engine. The generator coughed, sputtered, whispered itself asleep. Inside the office, voices rose in irritation, chairs scraped, boots thumped. The tall man came out first to kick the box, then bent to pull the hatch open. Noah ghosted the gap, slid inside, and shut the office door before the wind could snitch. The prefab smelled like coffee burned into tin and paper dust. A corkboard wore printouts of manifests, delivery windows, and a north-south map with hand-drawn arrows like migrating geese. The desk held a second sat phone with the same login pulse and a laptop locked behind a screensaver that tossed up Northern Interior's logo every 60 seconds, as if to guard against loneliness. He moved to the file drawer. The key hung from a string thumbtacked under the desk, lazy security often being the most realistic kind. He turned the lock and found a box of tamper strips, blank, contracts, and a sheet of root tokens stapled at random intervals. Root tokens. He photographed the sheet, then slid it back and closed the drawer, leaving the key where it had been. The screensaver showed a time in the corner, 11:06. He had maybe 4 minutes before someone with authority would do an angry walkthrough. He keyed the sat phone and entered a token at random. The screen cleared to a bare-bones menu. Queue, messages, roots, erase. He opened messages. A small grid of times with one letter each populated the screen like a code that didn't trust itself. He highlighted the latest and hit open. It was not content. It was a pointer, a hash referencing something that lived elsewhere. DY22 anchor bear, 2 words with more than one meaning in Alaska. 2 words with enough romance to look like nothing serious to a casual eye. He backed out, hit roots, and saw a cut-down list. Birch Point, Eel Bank, Bear Anchor, Cougar Step. He took photos of each screen. He hit erase, not to purge, but to see the warning. It flashed, requires master key. Good. Someone had built at least one fence. The door rattled. He slid the sat phone back to the exact angle and length of cord he'd found it, then stepped to the corkboard, as if he belonged there, and clipped a random paper into a file he could plausibly hold. When the tall man pushed in, Noah let the door open into his shoulder and said, annoyed, "If the generator's going to die every time the wind sneezes, maybe we keep a space heater that's not older than I am." The tall man took him in. DHS jacket under frost, goggles up, the confidence you wear when you expect to be obeyed. "Who the hell?" Noah flipped his badge open and showed him a face that looked a lot like his from 3 years ago, because it was. He hadn't worn the badge in months, but bureaucracy is an unintentional archivist. Liability inspection, Noah said. Your contractor of record is Northern Interior. They've been flagged for workplace exposure complaints. I need your lockout procedures for the drums, and I need to see your eyewash station. The tall man's eyes did a thing like a door almost closing. He didn't buy it, not completely, but he didn't not buy it either, and the cold wanted this conversation to be over. We don't have an eyewash. Write that down, Noah said, holding up a blank form he had just extracted from thin air and nerve. Also, where's your spill kit, and who signed for this week's drum transfer? He watched the man flinch at signed. Paper fears paper. Merrow's office has all that, the man said. In town. Anchor? Noah asked, like a man clicking puzzle pieces he'd been given. Anchor, the man said. Warehouse by the old shipyard. Noah nodded like that was the answer he expected. He wrote Anchor, warehouse, on the top of the blank form and underlined it twice to give the moment a sense of completed ritual. Someone will come by to tag any safety deficiencies. In the meantime, keep the generator lid closed. You're sucking snow. The man grunted, already bored again, already thinking about coffee. Noah left into the wind. At the generator box, he dragged his glove across the hatch in a way that made the smear match the tall man's boot scuffs. He circled, collected his camera, and found Kira posted under the grater, eyes on the smokers. Let's go find Anchor, he said. They ghosted back through willow and birch, crossed the bridge where the river breathed fog in steady lungs, and climbed the slope toward the track that would take them to the highway if they needed it, and to the old weather outpost if they turned left at the Y. Noah turned left. By the time the outpost's dish rose out of the trees like a dead moonflower, the light had gone flat. The cinderblock building wore ice-like armor. The door had a keypad smeared with mint soot and a bolt that could stop memory. He keyed in a code that had opened 100 similar doors, 24628. It beeped its disapproval, then, perhaps seduced by the distant power of shared government ancestry, chirped green on the second try, 1357. Inside was old coffee, equipment hum and survival, blankets stacked, a whiteboard with yesterday's wind chill numbers, a bulletin tacked with a single note in neat hand. If you're cold, the radio is colder. Be kind. Kira shook snow out of her coat and stamped her paws like a small horse. Noah wiped the lanyard of the sat phone dry and set about waking the uplink. Sat dish, narrowband amplifier, the little modem that talked to the sky like a supplicant. Static came first, like a choir clearing throats. He leaned into the mic. Base, this is Rain's DHS field. Authentication to follow. Need secure pipe. Silence, then a carrier tone that felt like hope. Rains? A woman's voice said, professional warmth under tension. If this is a joke, it's in poor taste. He smiled. That voice had walked him through worse code than this cold. Lila. A pause. When she came back, the professional veneer had cracked and something human had leaked out. You're supposed to be dead. Working on the opposite, he said. I have a ledger, a sat phone locked to tokens referencing DY22, and a staging yard pointing toward an Anchor warehouse. I need you to pull northern routing on Northern Interior and give me an address that isn't on Google's postcards. Kira lifted her head at the name Lila and wagged once, a secret only the three of them knew. On the line, keys rattled like rain. Then Lila exhaled through her nose in a way that said she'd found a thing that confirmed the shape of her worst theory. I've got an Anchor Bay address, she said. Bear Street, no signage. Leases through a stack of LLCs that loop back to a defense contractor's holding arm. Noah. He waited. I think DY22 isn't a code name. I think it's a carve-out. He knew the word. It lived in corners where tax law shakes hands with war. A carve-out lets something be both outside and owned, disavowed and defended. Send the coordinates, he said. Working on it, she said. Also, your op file is changed. Someone edited the raid after action 3 hours ago. Your team's KIA listed. You're not on the roster. Ghost, he said. Yeah, she said softly. Ghost. Static blossomed. The carrier thinned. Lila's voice pinched. They're jamming. Meet me where the radio can't be killed by a battery in a backpack, he said. The outpost. On my way. He killed the uplink, shut the room down to low hum, and sat with his back to the block wall. Kira pushed her shoulder into his boot and sighed. Bear Street, he said to the ceiling. Anchor. DY22. And Lila. Outside, the river remembered its old route under a winter it didn't believe would ever end. He believed in rivers. They take the long way, but they always arrive. By the time the sky lost even the pretense of blue, the wind had filed the drifts into glacial ribs. Lila Chen arrived wrapped in a navy parka that made her look like a walking midnight. Goggles reflecting the outpost door and insect facets. She hugged Noah without asking if he was huggable, then held him at arm's length to inventory the bruises life had left on his face. 2 things, she said. 1, you look like a rumor. 2, I brought cinnamon buns. Kira made a churro noise of appreciation. Lila dropped to a knee, let the Malinois sniff her gloves, then offered the back of her hand to be accepted into the society of the living. Hi, hero, she whispered. Kira leaned and gifted her a sigh. They ate sweetness with bare fingers and let their bodies briefly remember there were other uses for hands than fighting and typing. Then the work pulled them back. The way a tide pretends to be still and then reminds you who it is. Lila rolled her kit out on the desk, a tough book, a travel router, a tiny Faraday pouch. You weren't kidding about DY22, she said, opening windows like doors. I've been shadowing money with no source and outcomes, with no signature for 6 months. Every breadcrumb led to a blank line labeled with that honeycomb. It's a side pocket. Partnership between a contractor's foreign supply wing and a sliver of government that pretends to be dead so it can cheat at chess. Silas Marrow? Noah asked. He's the hands, she said. The pocket belongs to someone who wears suits to ghost stories. She reached for the sat phone. May I? He slid it over. She breathed on her fingers, flexed them, and then worked the soft keys like she was asking the device to dance. Route tokens look random, but they're spaced like a metronome, she murmured. If the person who typed these was scared, their fear had rhythm. Kira settled with her chin on Noah's boot. The outpost hummed. The dish outside scanned the sky that kept pretending it didn't know them. Okay, Lila said. Here's your route list. Bear Anchor is a pseudo-location. It maps to a warehouse grid 2 blocks off Bear Street. The pointer in your messages, Angkor Bear, likely references a crate tag or a package-ready flag. And look here. She tapped a corner of the screen. The queue has a dead message injected as noise, but if you peel away the null bytes, she did. A string unfolded, Frost bind 2310, Angkor Bay, door 4, blue lift. Door 4, Noah said. Blue lift. And 2310, Lila added, tonight. A thump sounded on the roof. Not wind, not snow. Something heavier than weather. They looked at each other. Old drills woke in their shoulders. Lila killed the screen with a hand flat as a blessing. Noah took 2 steps and clicked the overhead fluorescents dead. The room went to dim instrument glow. He moved to the door and set the latch, then put his palm on the concrete wall and felt the vibration through old cement and new stories. Kira's ears slid forward. The low sound in her chest turned into a statement. "Generator box?" Lila breathed. He shook his head. Thumps moved from roof to ground. Footfalls. 2, 3, maybe 4. A voice under a hat brim muttered something that contained a laugh. They had options. None were excellent. The outpost had rear access through a half-buried service hatch that opened into waist-deep snow. There was the dish shaft if you wanted to fall to your death, quietly. There was the front door and the truth that sometimes forward is the only direction you can walk honestly. Noah pointed Lila to the service hatch and put one finger to his lips. She shook her head. "You go," she mouthed. He shook his. Kira cocked her head like a referee tired of athletes lying about fouls. The doorknob ticked, not a rattle, a confident test. Then a key slid in and turned as if it had done so yesterday. The door opened 6 inches and paused against the chain. A black-gloved hand reached in to lift the chain, felt it, and withdrew. "Rains," a voice said. The accent wore anchorage like an old coat. "If you're in there, come out. If you make me come in, I'll owe you a hospital visit." Noah breathed once, twice. He unlocked the chain, stood behind the door, and let it swing open. The wind reached inside and pawed at the papers. 4 shapes edged around the threshold, backs to the room. Weapons hung low like they belonged there. Deputies in winter kit, county patch exhausted by wash and time. The lead deputy took in Kira first, then Noah's face, then the SAT gear. He lowered his rifle a centimeter. "Ward said you might be here," he said. Noah blinked. "Ethan Ward?" The deputy nodded once, a heavy, meaningful thing. "Said to tell you the ridge paid for what the river owed. I don't speak poet. I'm just doing the errand. He also said you're either the solution or the story on the evening news." A laugh rose in Noah's throat like a bubble and died there. Ethan Ward had taught him to read snow when he'd first been sent north to assist people who lived here. Ethan had also taught him that most people didn't need assisting. They needed someone to walk beside them without explaining the ground to them. "Where is he?" Noah asked. The deputy's eyes moved away and came back with a truth they hadn't wanted to carry. "Holding a ridge," he said simply. "Bought you an hour." He glanced at Lila. "You must be the doctor." "Of what depends on the day," she said, voice thin with a grief she'd filed away and just found again. "Either way," the deputy said. "We've got trucks coming up from Bear Street. Someone doesn't like the sauce you're making. If you have to move, do it now. If you're staying, you'll want the lights out and the back door dug." Noah looked at Lila. She rolled her shoulders and answered the question he hadn't voiced. "Door 4 still. Happens at 2310, whether we're there or not." He nodded. He thought of Hawkins and Lena and the tripwire and the old cedar. He thought of the sat phone's lanyard and the way Kira had set her body inside his cold to make it smaller. He looked at the deputy. "We dig." They worked with shovels that had been leaning by the hatch since the day someone decided to put this outpost where radios could see the sky. Snow yielded in grudging slabs. Kira took a turn by simply being a furnace in a small space. By the time the hatch was viable, truck lights had stitched the far tree line with coming. The deputy posted one of his men with a long gun by the dish shadow, another by the generator box, and kept the 4th to watch the door with him. "If they're professionals," he said, "they won't spray. They'll push, Find weak lumber and pry. Good, Noah said. We're concrete and patience. Lila tapped the sat phone, coaxed one more message from it, something buried deep in a dead sector. She decrypted, frowned, and turned the screen. DY22. Ward, receipt scrolled, then a text block like a confession. Ethan's name, dates and coordinates, a ledger of small betrayals that added up to an avalanche. But at the bottom, a transfer out, data packets sent to a single recipient over months, each tagged with a checksum that matched Lila's private relay. He was talking to you, Noah said. He was trying, Lila answered, mouth tight. And someone was trying to make that look like treason. The trucks idled outside like animals catching breath. A bullhorn barked a name that wasn't Noah's, and then the same voice tried on reins, like it was a poorly fitted coat. We have a warrant, it lied. We have heaters, it added, more honestly. The deputy grinned without humor. They always bring heaters to the Cold War. The first pry bar wedged between door and jamb. Noah let the metal sing in his bones, counted beats. On 2, he nodded to Lila. She slipped through the hatch with Kira at her heels. On 3, he slung his pack and handed the sat phone to the deputy. If I don't come back, give this to the woman who'll walk in here asking for it with no badge and better eyes than mine. He scribbled a name on the back of the cinnamon bun wrapper and tucked it into the deputy's glove. Copy, the man said. You're coming back, Lila hissed from below. Door 4, he reminded her. Blue lift. Her eyes said things the rules of their work had never let them say. Then she disappeared into the white. The pry bar squealed victory. The door opened a crack wide enough for a human lie to slip through. Then a boot. The deputy met the boot with the door, and the door with his shoulder. Someone outside swore in a language that wore the cold better than English. Noah stepped into the dish shadow and listened until the rhythm of the men outside matched his own lungs. Then he moved, low and right, past the generator, along the wall, into the trees. The trucks were pointed south, warm noses steaming, drivers idling heaters, a little lazy the way humans get when the night is long and the orders are stupid. He slid under the last truck, belly to cold, and peered up into the engine's glowing, miserable heart. He pulled a small cutter from his pocket and nicked a wire where the loom already looked tired. When the driver finally revved to move, the truck would cough and die in a way that felt like an old problem, not sabotage. He did the second truck the same, then ghosted deeper into the trees, letting his tracks cross and double and fade. He found the service hatch mouth by listening for Lila's breath in a quiet too loud with men and engines. She caught his hand and pulled him down into the black. Door 4? She whispered. Blue lift? He said. Behind them, the outpost door finally surrendered. Boots and breath, and the arrogance of men who believed paperwork made them right, spilled into the room. The deputy's voice greeted them with a badge number and a name, and the kind of hospitality that meant, you might win, but you will not feel unopposed. Noah and Lila moved like a river under ice, following a crawl space to the tree line, then rising into night that smelled like diesel and old snow. Anchorage waited to the south, a low halo of sodium lamp and ship horns and choices. They turned toward it, breath in white ropes. Time, like the cold, would not be negotiable. By dawn, the outpost behind them was only a rumor swallowed by snow. Noah and Lila followed the service road west, the world around them reduced to white breath and the metronome of boots crunching ice. Kira scouted ahead, a blur of tan against the fog that thickened until distance stopped existing. They didn't talk much, Words carried too far in air like this, frozen and thin enough to hold secrets forever. At the ridgeline, Noah raised a fist. Lila froze, breath hitching behind her mask. He crouched and brushed aside a crust of snow to reveal tire tracks. Fresh, maybe half an hour old. Bear Street runs that way, he said quietly. They're moving crates early. Lila checked her tablet, tapping through a SAT overlay that struggled for signal. Anchorage grid traffic shows nothing. These trucks aren't registered. Then we're in front of the story, Noah said. Good. They descended into a canyon where the fog ran like milk poured over slate. The air carried the hush that only comes before violence. Kira halted suddenly, one paw lifted, ears carving the silence. Then, footsteps. Faint, steady, circling. Noah slid behind a boulder and signaled Lila down. Shapes drifted through the white. 2 men in contractor grays, rifles slung casual, masks up. They weren't searching. They were guarding. He pointed left. Lila nodded. Together they flanked low and slow until the fog swallowed all direction. Then Kira tensed, muscles coiling. The first man passed within 5 meters. Kira leapt. The sound was soft. A thud, a breath, snow falling from branches. The second man spun, firing blind. The round split the air beside Noah's cheek. He tackled the shooter, both rolling through powder until gravity remembered itself. When silence came back, it came too easily. Lila crouched over the bodies, checking insignia. Private security, not DHS, not locals. She looked up. We're ghosts fighting ghosts. Noah searched the first man's pack. Inside, a tablet wrapped in thermal cloth and a stack of laminated route slips marked with contractor seals. The top one read, Anchor Bay, Blue Lift, 2310. That's tonight, Lila said. It's still happening. He nodded. Then we crashed their midnight mass. They climbed higher to get signal. The fog tore itself open in sudden gusts, showing a skeletal radio tower ahead, half collapsed, cables hanging like ribs. Noah scanned the horizon, dark smudge of highway, far-off orange pulse of Anchorage. Civilization pretending not to notice its ghosts. He keyed the sat phone, hoping for Lila's network. Static. Then, Rains. This is Base 2. You need to move. They've issued a ghost protocol, kill verification in the field. The voice wasn't Lila's. It was Ward's deputy. Noah's pulse ticked once, then went still. Copy that. Any friendlies? Few, but you've got watchers on every grid. Someone's burning names. The transmission. Cut. Lila watched him. We just got promoted from missing to inconvenient. Then we stay inconvenient, he said. They reached the tower's base. Noah found a maintenance hatch and forced it open. Inside, dry cables, frozen dust, a field kit stashed long ago, batteries, flares, a worn photo of a man and a child taped to the panel. Humanity leaves fingerprints in every apocalypse. He pocketed a flare. We'll need light where we're going. Kira barked once, sharp, warning. Footsteps again, this time heavier. Engines idling somewhere below. Lila slung her pack. We can't outrun trucks in this fog. No, Noah said, but we can make the fog theirs. They dragged the fallen guards' flares into the drift and cracked them one by one. Red smoke poured out, thick and alive, mixing with the ice fog until color became confusion. Noah moved through it like it was choreography he'd practiced all his life. Steps, breath, pause, wait. Engines revved below, lights slicing red clouds into pieces, shouts in 2 radios overlapped, panic painted in human tones. When it was over, only silence and the smell of burned magnesium remained. Lila touched Noah's arm. That wasn't war, she said softly. That was erasure. He didn't argue. He just looked toward the dark outline of the city below them. Then let's make sure something stays written. They turned their backs on the ruined tower. The flare still hissed behind them, its glow swallowed slowly by the snow. Ahead waited Bear Street. Door 4, the blue lift, and whatever truth was buried beneath DY-22. The mountains of Eagle Hollow had many mouths, but only one ever breathed. Locals called it the Mine's Mouth, a collapsed shaft from the Cold War era, sealed after a cave-in, buried under decades of ice and rumor. To Noah Raines, it was just another coordinate on a map. To Kira, it was a scent, metal, oil, and something ancient. They reached the site by dusk. The sky bruised purple, bleeding light through layers of fog. Snow powdered everything, the boulders, the rusted warning signs, the bent chain-link gate. Lila exhaled, her breath a ghost in the twilight. "This is where the blue lift routes converge," she said, holding her tablet toward the entrance. "Every signal ends here." Noah stepped closer, running a gloved hand along the metal frame of the gate. "Feels like a heartbeat." The hum was faint, but real. Some low-frequency vibration pulsing under the ground, too steady to be wind. He crouched, brushed away snow, and revealed a row of tire tracks circling the shaft entrance. Fresh again. "They're still using this place," Lila whispered. Kira barked once, low, uncertain. Her breath formed a halo in the cold air. The dog's ears pressed back, her instincts faster than their analysis. "Okay," Noah murmured, checking his weapon. "We go quiet from here." The mine's tunnel swallowed their light whole. Each beam from their flashlights dissolved into the black like ink into water. Rusted rails ran down into darkness, glistening faintly under frost. The air carried that hollow metallic taste that comes from air trapped too long underground. They moved slow, careful. Kira led, nose to the ground. Every step echoed like memory. Halfway down the main tunnel, Noah froze. On the wall to their right, painted in faded red, DY-22. He traced the letters with a finger. The paint flaked, old, but not ancient. "You said this code showed up in the manifests," he whispered. Lila nodded. Dynetech, Project 22. They were researching AI-linked logistics for NATO convoys, supposedly shut down 5 years ago. Supposedly. They pushed deeper. The tunnel forked left and right. Kira growled softly toward the left branch. Noah followed her gaze. Faint blue light flickered from somewhere ahead. Lila pulled her pistol. "If someone's here, then we find out why," Noah finished. The corridor opened into a massive chamber. Rows of metal crates sat half buried in frost, each stamped with the same insignia, Dynetech Systems, restricted. The air hummed with residual energy. In the center, a generator thrummed weakly, powered by cables running deeper into the shaft. Lila's voice trembled. "This isn't abandoned. Someone's keeping this place alive." Noah approached a control console. Dust covered everything except the keyboard. He brushed it aside and tapped a few keys. The screen flickered, displaying a single encrypted prompt. "Access node 22, biometrics required." He frowned. "They're gating, entry by DNA." "Military protocol?" "No," he murmured. "Personal." He reached into his vest pocket, pulling out a tiny metal vial sealed with frost. Inside was a blood sample, his own, a relic from his time in the service, stored for field clearance. He slid it into the console port. The monitor blinked. Identity, Raines, Noah J. Access level 3 confirmed. Lila's eyes widened. "You were cleared for this?" "I shouldn't be." The generator's hum deepened. Doors along the far wall hissed open, releasing a stale gust of air. Beyond them lay a narrow corridor lined with sealed pods. Inside each, faint silhouettes, humanoid, unmoving. Lila stepped forward, whispering, "Oh God." Each pod held a K9 unit, cybernetic implants along their spines, metal plates under fur now frozen stiff. Some pods were empty. Some had glass shattered outward. Noah's throat tightened. Project Shepherd. What? It was rumored after Fallujah. Experimental AI handlers. Dogs bonded to field agents through neural feedback chips. They said it failed. The animals broke. He looked down at Kira, who stood rigid, eyes locked on the nearest pod. Her body trembled. Not fear, but memory. Lila whispered, "You think she's one of them?" Before Noah could answer, the tunnel lights flickered. A harsh, mechanical voice filled the chamber. Unauthorized access detected. Purge protocol initiated. The door behind them slammed shut. Red lights ignited overhead. The generator screamed. "Move!" Noah shouted. They sprinted down the corridor as sirens echoed like gunfire. Steam erupted from the vents, the air turning into molten frost. Kira led the way, muscles coiled, instincts unshakable. At the far end, an emergency ladder climbed toward the surface. Noah shoved Lila upward first, then followed, his shoulder protesting every movement. Below, the pods cracked one by one, glass shattering, claws scraping metal. Something alive was waking. He looked down once and froze. From the last pod, a dog identical to Kira stepped out. Same color, same build, same scar on the leg. But its eyes glowed electric blue. Kira barked furiously, the sound echoing like defiance. The other creature tilted its head, almost curious. Then it lunged. Noah climbed faster, pulling Kira by the harness. The ladder groaned under his weight. A clawed paw slashed upward, scraping his boot. He swung his rifle, fired down once. Steel rang, sparks flew. Then they broke into air and snow again. The hatch blew open behind them as the pressure equalized. A plume of white smoke followed, the sound of distant howls echoing from below. Lila gasped for breath. What was that? Noah didn't answer right away. He just looked at Kira, who stood panting beside him, blood on her muzzle, eyes wide. That, he said softly, was her shadow. They retreated to a frozen ridge a mile from the mine. From there, they could see faint light flickering within the collapsed shaft, like a heartbeat under the ice. Lila wrapped her coat tighter. If they cloned K9s from the Shepherd Project, then someone rebuilt the bond, Noah finished. And if they're running Blue Lift shipments, that means they're moving something they can't track with human hands. He sat on a rock, rubbing Kira's neck. The dog leaned into him, trembling. She remembers, he murmured. Whatever they did down there, it's in her blood. Lila sat beside him. You said once you didn't believe in miracles. He smiled faintly. I lied. They watched the mine's light fade until only the stars remained. The wind carried the faintest echo of metallic barking, machine, memory, or both. In the darkness, Kira pressed closer, resting her head against Noah's leg. For the first time since the ambush, he didn't feel alone. Somewhere deep beneath them, the other K9's eyes still glowed, waiting. The sun over Alaska didn't rise so much as it bled into the sky, a pale wound leaking light through ice fog. By the time Noah, Lila, and Kira reached the ridge overlooking the highway, the horizon had gone gold and white and cruel. The road to Anchorage's industrial quarter curved through the valley like a scar. Trucks moved below, small as beetles, their diesel fumes turning into ribbons of smoke that drifted up toward the ridge. Each one was tagged with the Northern Interior Logistics logo, the same mountain scar as on the crates in the mine. Same supply chain, Lila murmured, adjusting her binoculars. Same ghost signatures. Noah crouched beside her, rubbing the bridge of his nose. He hadn't slept in 36 hours. His breath came out like fog against the cold. "Let's make sure they're not moving anything we can't unsee." Kira whined softly, tail low. The dog's fur was stiff with frost, but her eyes burned clear amber. Noah reached out and brushed snow from her neck. "She knows something's wrong," he said quietly. "She's smarter than both of us combined," Lila replied. They watched the convoy for several minutes before Lila spoke again. "There's a pattern," she said, pointing. "Every third truck, no registration, no heat trace from the driver's cab. They're automated, self-driving, running on internal code. Which means someone doesn't want human eyes on what's inside." Noah's jaw tightened. "Then we follow." They tailed the convoy from a distance, snow chains crunching under the truck's rhythm. The air temperature dropped another 5 degrees, turning breath into crystal. The road narrowed until the convoy peeled off toward an abandoned industrial park. Rusted cranes, silent warehouses, and the smell of oil frozen in time. Lila checked the tablet again. "This is Bear Street," she said. "And there, door 4, blue lift." The warehouse sat squat and wide at the end of the lot, its loading bay light flickering weakly. A half-buried sign read, "Anchor Bay Storage. Authorized personnel only." Kira's hackles rose. Noah felt it through her leash before he even saw movement. A guard tower near the east corner, 2 figures silhouetted against the dying light. "2 on watch," he whispered. "We move when the wind shifts." They waited. The wind came like a gift, sharp, loud, covering sound. Noah and Lila sprinted low across the open ground. Snow kicked up behind them in silver plumes. Kira bounded ahead, muscles smooth and silent. At the loading bay, Noah found the keypad crusted with ice. He blew warm air on it and scraped with his glove until the numbers showed. "Same pattern," he murmured. 2468. The light blinked red, then green. "Déjà vu," Lila said. They slipped inside. The warehouse interior was a cathedral of shadows. Pallets of crates stretched into the dark, each marked with numbers that made no sense until you saw the rhythm in them. An encryption disguised as inventory. The hum of generators vibrated underfoot. Kira moved ahead, nose twitching, paws barely making sound. She stopped near one stack of crates and let out a single low growl. Noah knelt beside her, pried open the lid of the nearest crate. Inside wasn't ore or weapon parts, it was paper. Thousands of sheets stacked and sealed in plastic. Lila pulled one out. Her gloved fingers shook. They weren't manifests. They were names, pages and pages of them. Soldiers, agents, contractors. Every line ended with a status code, MIA, KIA, or redirected. And at the bottom of the last page, Rains, Noah J. Status, terminated. Asset redeployed, DY22. Lila swallowed. Redeployed? Noah stared at the word until it stopped making sense. "They didn't kill us," he said slowly. "They recycled us." He reached deeper into the crate. Beneath the pages lay a metal device the size of a shoebox, smooth, black, humming faintly. A Dynetech tag gleamed on its side. Neural Interface Unit, Prototype 3B. "This is what they put in the shepherd dogs," he whispered. This links mind to command net." Lila's voice dropped to a whisper. "Noah, are you saying DY22 isn't just a project?" He nodded. "It's a collection. People, dogs, machines, anything loyal that could be programmed to obey." Kira whined, stepping back from the crate. Her body trembled. Noah reached to steady her, and then her head snapped up. A sound, soft, metallic, footsteps. He looked toward the far end of the warehouse. A figure emerged from the dark. Tall, calm, familiar. Noah froze. "No." The man wore an Arctic parka, hood down. His face was pale, cut with the same lines Noah remembered from a lifetime ago. Cole Hawkins, Noah breathed. Lila gasped. Your teammate? He died in the ambush. Hawkins smiled faintly, as if the word died were a polite exaggeration. That's what they told you. Hawkins stepped closer, boots crunching frost. His eyes gleamed, wrong somehow. Not glassy, not human exactly, but lit from within like the canine clones. They rebuilt me, he said softly. And I remembered everything. The cold, the tree, your voice on the radio saying you'd come back for us. Noah's voice cracked. What did they do to you? They made me efficient, Hawkins said. You should have seen the test runs, Noah. We don't break anymore. We don't question orders. We don't freeze. You're not you. Hawkins's smile faltered for a second, then steadied again. Maybe not, but you shouldn't have come here. Marrow knows. He's watching right now. Lila lifted her pistol. Tell him we're done running. Hawkins didn't move. His gaze shifted to Kira. She was meant to be decommissioned. You kept her alive. Noah stepped between them. You touch her, and we find out how efficient you really are. A faint laugh escaped Hawkins. Still the same, brother. He dropped a small object onto the floor. It clattered once, then began to beep. Noah didn't think. He grabbed Lila and threw her behind the nearest crate. Kira dove with them. The grenade went off in a flash of blue light, not an explosion, an electromagnetic pulse. The lights died, the generators coughed, every screen went black. Noah's vision swam. His ears rang. Somewhere in the dark, Hawkins' voice echoed, distorted and broken. They'll find you. The frost remembers its names. Then silence. When Noah's sight cleared, Hawkins was gone. Only his footprints remained, glowing faintly blue under residual static. Lila's voice came shakily. EMP, we're blind. Not blind, Noah said. Just forced to remember. He fumbled in his pack, pulled out a flare, and struck it. Red light flooded the space, painting the walls with trembling shadows. The names in the papers shimmered under the light. Thousands of souls caught between truth and deletion. Lila whispered, We have to get this out. This is proof. Noah nodded, jaw set. We'll burn the snow if we have to. They made it out through a side door, the cold biting like teeth. The sky had turned to iron. Snow began to fall again, slow, deliberate, as if the world itself were erasing what had happened. At the edge of the lot, Noah turned back once. The warehouse loomed behind them, its windows glowing faintly with residual blue light. Cole's alive, he said quietly. No, Lila said. Something wearing him is. He didn't argue. He couldn't. Kira pressed close to his leg, head low, her breath ragged. When Noah knelt beside her, she looked up at him with eyes full of pain and memory. She knew him, Noah said softly. She recognized his scent. Lila put a hand on his shoulder. Then he's not completely gone. Maybe that's how we reach him. Maybe, Noah said, but not tonight. They turned toward the horizon where the city lights bled faint gold through the storm. Their tracks stretched behind them, already fading. Hours later, they made camp in the ruins of a ranger's cabin. The walls were half collapsed, the roof sagging, but the fireplace still worked. Lila sat near the flames, warming her hands. Noah leaned against the wall, staring at the flicker through Kira's fur. Shepherd, redeploy, DY-22. He said the words like puzzle pieces. They made us parts in something bigger. Lila looked at him. Then we take it apart. Noah nodded slowly. Tomorrow we start with Marrow. Kira shifted in her sleep, paws twitching. Her tail thumped once, twice, like a heartbeat. or a signal from somewhere deep under the frost. Outside, the snow fell quietly, the kind of snow that covers blood, but never the truth.
The storm had passed, but the silence it left behind was heavier than the wind. For days, Ethan had chased echoes through frozen corridors, signals buried beneath ice, voices that refused to die. Every transmission brought him closer to a truth he wasn't ready to face. And yet through every scream of static, through every sleepless night, one thing remained constant, the heartbeat beside him. Ghost. The only soul that still believed he could come back from the dark. He'd thought the North Star was gone, swallowed by snow, buried under guilt. But out here, where the cold devoured sound and time itself froze, he began to understand. The North Star was never a light in the sky. It was the promise you keep, even when no one's listening. As dawn broke over the Arctic ridge, Ethan raised his head. Somewhere deep within the static, a woman's voice whispered again, soft, fragile, alive. Ethan, the signal's changing. He looked toward the horizon. The red beacon on the tower blinked once, slow, deliberate, and in that single pulse of light, he knew this wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something far more dangerous. The silence is breaking, the signal is growing, and what's buried beneath the ice is finally waking up. Watch part 2 now, chapters 7 to the end.